Worship in France are the question of Lucifer, a record of things seen and heard in the secret societies according to the evidence of initiates. Chapters, is it 6 or is it 7? Oh, it's chapter 7. The Devil and the Doctor, continued here. There, on a bed of coconut fiber, he found his patient, from whose mummified and hideous appearance he at once concluded that she was entirely given over to Satan, and had long been a lost soul. As spiritually, so also physically, she was past all human aid. Indeed, she seemed dead already, and he gave his medical opinion to that effect. The countenance of this opinion was apparently the warrant required for the proceedings which immediately followed, and it is difficult to understand why fakirs in league with Satan, for such we are told they were, and possessed, no doubt, both of ordinary native and occult methods of diagnosis, could not have discovered this for themselves, more especially as the lady, who seems to have been a pythoness by profession, and commerced with a familiar spirit, had already reached the ripe age of 152 years. To shorten a long and peculiarly noisome story, the astounded doctor ultimately beheld the dying woman revive suddenly and crawl to the end of the chamber, where there was an elaborate altar surmounted by a figure of Baphomet. The fakirs crowned round her. The ape, the bat, the snake, the cat, all appeared on the scene. A brilliant illumination was produced by means of 11 lamps suspended from the ceiling. The woman drew herself into an erect position. The fakirs I don't know the plural of fakir. Poor person. Piled resinous branches round her, amidst invocations, mysterious chants, and yells. She permitted herself to be burned to death, her body slowly blackening, her face turning scarlet in the flames, her eyes starting from her head, and so she had passed into ashes. So we're obviously not dealing with Islamic people, are we? Why was the doctor privileged to be present at these proceedings? Because an agent of the fakirs had previously investigated his portmanteau. On the hotel premises, and had discovered his Memphis insignia, which they returned to him in the mortuary chamber. As to the Baphomet, it is very fully described, and is identified with similar images of Masonic lodges in America, India, Paris, Rome, Shanghai, and Montevideo. The doctor says that it is the god of the occultist that the venerable Seta quoted Latin as intelligently as the ape spoke to Mill. He overwhelmed his benefactor with acknowledgments, and instead of a fee presented him with a winged lingam, by means of which he would be received among all worshippers of Lucifer in India, China. In fact, as Sata said, partout, maybe? So did Dr. Batel make his first acquaintance with practical occultism, and these things being done, he returned to his hotel and departed thankfully to bed. So, lesson learned. Carry around a little penis statue with wings on it, and you'll be accepted everywhere. I don't think that's true, and I don't want to try it. What's this strange dildo you have? Yeah, don't want to even own such a thing. I know people make crystal dildos that are worth hundreds of dollars, but I mean, come on. Even it being worth money, you'd want to turn it into something else, and I don't know what you could do with a thing like that. A house of rottenness. Who would possess a lingam, which was an open sesame to deviltum, and not make use thereof, by effecting an exchange with another ship's doctor? The exploiter of Lucifer found himself presently Pondicherry, with 3 months of comparative freedom before him to explore the mysteries of the Oriental Peninsula. Need I say that he had scarcely landed at the French seaboard town when he at once made acquaintance with the very person who of all others was most subtle, most suitable to his scheme. This was Ramasamy Panatamli Pale Dabachi. Quite a short name, he assures us. Yeah, that's a short name. For the natives of this part, well, some people, off the bat, they will tell you their whole. I remember my family back 50 generations, or 100 generations, or even 10 generations. Well, yeah, once you get to know them, this is how they introduce themselves. But once they start talking, you can, oh, I'm this son of this. Very simple short names as a rule. But 3 parts is not too bad though. Al Pondicherry, more or less, abounded in lignums and Lucifer, but he carried his right hand clenched. The doctor at once suspected the half-naked Ramasam to be more than commonly devoted to the persuasion of perdition. Nor was he mistaken, for the latter promptly inquired, "What is your age?" 11 years, said the doctor. Whence do you come? From the eternal flame. Whither do you go? To the flames eternal. And to their mutual satisfaction they agreed the sacred name of Baal Seboob. Really, Baal Seboob would be Lord of the Flies. Zaboob would be golden pussy, golden pus, copulation, master, different things. The doctor producing his winged lingam, at which the other fell down in the open streets and adored him. The exhibition of the patent of a sovereign grand master ad vitam of the right to Memphis inspired further respect. It was evidently a document with which Ramasam had long been familiar, and he had begun to talk glibly of titling. Like the horrors of Udolpho, the explanation was, of course, very simple. Mr. John Campbell, an American, had instituted a lodge of the Yorkite at Pondicherry, which, in the most natural manner, admitted the Luciferian factors as visitors. The Luciferian factors admitted the members of the Yorkite to their conventions, and they all bedeviled one another. It would be idle to suppose that that 3-dot thing, Campbell, was not at Pondicherry on business when the doctor chanced to arrive, and in the course of the afternoon the latter was taken by Ramasam to a house of ordinary appearance, into which they were admitted by another Indian. Might be more proper to call them Hindus, but Hindu or Sindhu or something. But Hinduism isn't a religion. It's just something the British came up to call them. Who, of course, like the guide, spoke good French, through the greenery of a garden and the gloom of a well, and the entanglement of certain stairways, they entered a great dismantled temple devoted to the service of Brahma under the unimpressive diminutive of Lucifer. Remember, Luke as in light, not nox, not noxious, not any, it's a very positive term, Lucifer is. The infernal sanctuary had a statue of Baphomet identical with that in Ceylon, and the ill-ventilated place reeked with horrible putrescence. Its noisome condition was mainly owing to the presence of various fakirs who, though still alive, were in advanced stages of putrefaction. Most people are supposed to go easily and pleasantly to the devil, but these elected to do so by way of a charnel house asceticism, an elaborate system of self-torture. Some were suspended from the ceiling by a rope tied to their arms, some embedded in plaster, some stiffened in a circle, while some permanently distorted into the shape of the letter S. Some were head downwards. Some in cruciform position. It was really quite monstrous, says the doctor, but a native Grand Master explained. They had postured for years in this manner, and one of them for a quarter of a century. Frater, F.R., probably frater, brother, John Campbell proceeded to harangue the assembly in Urdu Zaban, but the doctor comprehended completely and reports the substance of his speech, which was violently anti-Catholic in its nature, and especially directed against missionaries. This finished, they proceeded to the evocation of Baal Zebub, at first by the conjuration of the four, but no fiend appeared. The operation was repeated ineffectually a second time, and John Campbell determined upon the grand rite, which began by each person spinning on his own axis, in this manner circumambulating the temple in procession. Whenever they passed an embedded fakir, he obtained an incantation from his lips, but still Baal Zebub failed. Thereupon the native Grand Master suggested that the evocation should be performed by the holiest of all the fakirs, who was produced from a cupboard more fetid than the temple itself, and proved to be in following condition: face eaten by rats, one bleeding eye hanging down by his mouth, legs covered with gangrene, ulcers, and rottenness, expression peaceful and happy. This is quite the stereotypical Middle Eastern / Islamic / Orient being insulted. Little piece of propaganda that kind of stirs up a lot of xenophobia, doesn't it? Entreated to call on Baal Zebub. Each time he opened his mouth, his eye fell into it. However, he continued the invocation, but no Baal Zebub manifested. A tripod of burning coals was next obtained, and a woman summoned for this purpose plunged her arm into the flames, inhaling with great delight the odor of her roasting flesh. Result nil. Then a white goat was produced, placed upon the altar of Baphomet, set alight, hideously tortured, cut open, and its entrails torn about by the native Grand Master, who spread them on the steps, uttering abominable blasphemies against Adonai. What? These people can't decide whether Adonai, Aleph, Daleth, Noon, Yud, the biblical, and, with a wow if you go further back in time, as the third letter, whether it's Satan or whether it's God. Are you going to use this word for which or which? But remember that these cruelties are far less common amongst Satanists than they are against churchgoers. And I mean, it does occur. Some of these things do occur, but it's not something to expect. Um, and just because somebody doesn't accept Christianity doesn't mean they're off doing this. This having also failed, great stones were raised from the floor. A nameless stench ascended, and a large consignment of living fakirs, eaten to the bone by worms, and falling to pieces in every direction, were dragged out from a number of skeletons, while serpents, giant spiders, and toads swarmed from all parts. The Grand Master seized one of the fakirs and cut his throat upon the altar, chanting the satanic liturgy amidst imprecations, curses, a chaos of voices, and the last agonies of the goat. The blood spurted forth upon the assistants, and the Grand Master sprinkled the Baphomet. A final howl of invocation resulted in complete failure, whereupon it was decided that Baal Zebub had business elsewhere. The doctor departed from the ceremony, fraternizing with Campbell, and kept his bed for 48 hours. That'd be the sort of, you're killing people left and right, and this place stinks, all this, why are you sticking around? What's wrong with you? But again, this is probably a complete fabrication. Part 5, the Seven Temples and a Sabbath in Sheol. It was in the month of October, 1880, that in the course of his enterprise, Dr. Batel reached Calcutta. Freemasonry, he informs us, invariably affects the horrible, as he invests Calcutta with the sombre hues of living death and universal putrefaction. It naturally follows that the Indian city is one of the 4 great directing centers of universal Freemasonry. Everywhere the pious doctor discovered the hand of Lucifer. Everywhere he beheld the consequences of superstition and Satanism. Cataclysms, floods, tornadoes, typhoons, plagues, cholera, representing the normal state of health and habit, and the consequences of universal persuasion in favor of the fiend. A corpse, he testifies, is met with at every step. The burning of smoke of widows ascends to heaven, and the plain of Dapa, in immediate contiguity to the city, is a vast carnal house, where innumerable multitudes of dead bodies are flung naked to the vultures. The English Mason will at once recognize that all the places in the world, Calcutta is the most suitable to be Mecca of the fraternity, and the capital of English India, the Kadosh of the Scottish Rite, the sublime chosen master of the Royal Ark, the commander of the White and Black Eagle of the Rite of Herodom, the perfectly initiated Grand Inspector of the Scottish Philosophical Rite, the elect brother of the Johannite Rite of Zinendorf, and the brother of the Red Cross of Swedenborg. 1,000 other dignitaries of 1,000 illuminations gather in the Grand Masonic Temple, and, as the doctor gravely tells us, are employed in cursing Catholicity by a special conjunction of the planets. The doctor, on reaching the headquarters, had immediate intelligence that the great Phileas Walder had himself recently arrived on a secret mission from Charleston. There, also, he made acquaintance with another luminary of devildom by the name Hobbes. who presided at the important proceedings which resulted in the damnation of Carbuccia. Brother Hobbes, possessed of much experience in Lucifer, gave many assurances concerning the incessant apparitions of the master of evil to all worldly persons. Now the doctor, by virtue of his Mizraim patient, was as much a priest forever according to the Melchizedek of Masonry, as if he had been born without a father or mother, but at the moment had not received the perfect initiation of the Palladium, technically. Therefore he had no right to participate in the supreme mysteries. However, it is needless to say that he had arrived in the nick of time to be present at a ceremony which takes place only once in 10 years, provided that he was willing to undergo the trifle of a preliminary ordeal. If you have to witness people being killed and tortured and all that, I hate to think what the ordeal is going to be. On the same evening, a select company of initiates proceeded in hiring carriages through the desolation of Dapa, under the convoy of initiated coachmen, for the operation of a great satanic solemnity. At an easy distance from the city is the Sheol of the native Indians, and hard by the latter place there is a mountain 500 feet high and 2,000 long, on the summit of which 7 temples are erected, communicating one with another by subterranean passages in the rock. The total absence of pagodas makes it evident that these temples are devoted to the worship of Satan. They form a gigantic triangle superposed on the vast plateau at the base of which the party descended from their conveyances and were met by a native with accommodating knowledge of French. Upon exchanging the sign of Lucifer, he conducted them to a hole in the rock, which gave upon a narrow passage guarded by a line of Sikhs with drawn swords, prepared to massacre anybody, and leading to the vestibule of the first temple, which was filled with a miscellaneous concourse of adepts, from officers and tea merchants, even to tanners and dentists. In the first temple, which was provided with the inevitable statue of Baphomet, but was withal bare and meagerly illuminated, the doctor was destined to pass through his promised ordeal, for which he was stripped to the skin, placed in the center of the assembly, and given at a given signal 1,000 odd venomous cobra kepelos were produced from holes in the wall and encouraged to fold him in their embraces, while the music of flute-playing fakirs alone intervened to prevent his instant death. He passed through this trying encounter with a valor which amazed himself, persisted in prolonging the ceremony, and otherwise proved himself a man of such extraordinary mettle that he earned universal respect and received the most flattering testimonials, even from Phileas Walder. That the serpents were undoubtedly venomous was afterwards proved upon the person of one of the natives present, who, delivered to their fury, fell covered with apparently mortal bites, but was subsequently treated by native remedies and carried before the altar of Baphomet to be cured by the special intervention of the good god Lucifer. Remember that Alex Jones and Mark Dice and stuff, they weren't the first people saying crazy stuff like this, but this ceremony was accomplished by the intervention of a lovely Indian vestal, by the prayers of the Grand Master, a silk merchant, by commercial persuasion, and by the mock baptism of a serpent, after which the sufferer rose to his feet, and the inconvenient venom spurted of itself out of his wounds. From the sanctuary of the serpents, the company then proceeded, with becoming recollection, into the second temple or sanctuary of the Phoenix, The second temple was brilliantly illuminated and ablaze with millions of precious stones, wrested by the wicked English from innumerable conquered rajas. It had garlands of diamonds, festoons of rubies, vast images of solid silver, and a gigantic phoenix in red gold, more solid than the silver. There was an altar beneath the phoenix, and a male and a female ape were composed at the altar steps, while the Grand Master proceeded to the celebration of a black mass, which was followed by amazing marriage of the two engaging animals, and of the sacrifice of a lamb brought alive into the temple, bleeding piteously, with nails driven through its feet. This was intended to symbolize an illuminated reprobation of celibacy and an approval of the married state or its less expensive substitutes. Prostitution. Those cultures tended to think of the girlfriend in the same way as the prostitute. It's like, but you can kind of understand why they would think that, because I will go out with every guy, the guy who will buy me my cigarettes. Okay, you mean you'll have sex with him for cigarettes? It's not a one-to-one trade. Okay, whatever. Remember the Yezdi, the seven sons of the Phoenix? One of the ideas of Malik Taus is as not as a god, but as a Lucifer character, but a rightful, he came down, bring the light. He rules with his 7 sons or his 6 sons. 7 sons of the Phoenix or 6 sons of the Phoenix. There are different variations of that myth, but that's talking about the devil, not. But it is given a Luciferian character. So, anyways, the third temple was consecrated to the mother of fallen women, who, in memory of the adventure of the apple, has a place in the calendar of Lucifer. The proceedings consisted of a dialogue between the Grand Master and the Vestal, which the becoming modesty of the doctor prevents him from describing even in the Latin tongue. Now, see, there's something else going on there. And that something else going on there is the clear idea that this slander of Hawa, Adam was there too. He made the same mistake. And wait, didn't she go on to have children? So let's not condemn her forever and let's just presume that she, did the right thing with her husband, if that's the myth that you're looking at. The woman had it first. It's like, well, yet the man took it too, The fourth temple was a Rosicrucian sanctuary, having an open sepulchre from which blue flames continually emanated. There was a platform in the midst of the temple designed for the accommodation of more Indian Vestals, one of whom it was proposed should evaporate into thin air, after which a fakir would be transformed before the whole company into a living mummy and be interred for a space of 3 years. These were among the events of the evening. Apparently, the whole country is paying for these little rituals, and were accomplished with great success without much disturbing the mental equilibrium of the doctor, though he confessed a certain impression when the fakir introduced his performance by suspension in mid-air. The fifth temple was consecrated to the Pelican, and was used by an English officer to deliver a short discourse on Masonic charity, which the doctor regarded as vulnerable from a mortal point of view, and suggestive of easy virtue. The sixth temple was that of the future, and was devoted to divinations, the oracles being given by a Vestal in the hypnotic condition, seated over a burning brazier. The doctor was accommodated with the test, but another inquirer, who had the temerity to be curious as to what was being done in the Vatican, received a severe rebuff. In vain did the spirit of the clairvoyant strive to penetrate the draughty and malarious palace of the Roman pontiff, and Phileas Walter, mortified and maddened, began to curse and swear like the first pope. The experiment disillusioned the assembly. They thoughtfully repaired the seventh temple, which, being sacred to fire, was equipped with a vast central furnace surmounted by a chimney and containing a gigantic figure of Baphomet. In spite of the intolerable heat pervading the center chamber, this idol contrived to preserve its outlines and to glow without pulverizing. Well, if it was a metal one, but Agni is probably what they're thinking of, the fire being worshipped. A ceremony of an impressive nature occurred in this apartment. A wild cat which strayed in through an open window was regarded as the appearance of a soul in transmigration, and in spite of its piteous protests was passed through the fire to Baal. And now the crowning function of the magnum opus of the mystery must take place in the Sheol of Dappa. A long procession filed from the mountain temples to the charnel house of the open plain. The night was dark, the moon had vanished in dismay, black clouds scuttled across the heavens, a feverish rain fell slowly at intervals, and the ground was dimly lit by the phosphorescence of the general putrefaction. The adepts went stumbling over dead bodies, disturbing rats and vultures, and proceeded to the formation of the magic chain, which consisted in high-grade masons provided with silk hats, sitting down in a vast circle, every adept embracing his particular corpse. The ceremony included the recitation of certain passages borrowed from popular grimoires, the object in view being the wholesale liberation of spirits wandering in the immediate neighborhood of their bodies. This closed the proceedings, and the doctor confesses that the distractions of the evening occasioned him a disturbed sleep accompanied by nightmares. 6. A Palladian invitation. Before leaving Calcutta, our adventurer purchased from Phileas Walder, for the sum of 200 francs, the serviceable dignitary of a Palladian hierarch, fortified, with which he would be enabled to penetrate everywhere, regarding all English possessions as peculiarly productive in the Dead Sea fruit of diabolism. Singapore was the next scene of his curious researches. The English as a nation are criminal, but Singapore is the yeast house of British wickedness, where vice ferments continually. There man personifies naturally, and most Masons Plattize. Well, slandering Plattism, but nowadays, Singapore and Thailand and stuff, don't send your kids to America. 5 to 10 times as bad are the rates of child molestation in America. We kind of lead the world now in that, and that's not a good thing, but other places are known for it.